Greetings and welcome to another edition of the Red Pill Diaries, and I'm your host Rashid. And right now we're waiting for Larry to join us. I saw him trying to get in the booth, and evidently he was knocked out of the booth. So we'll wait for him to try to get back in the booth. But until then, we're going to chop it up. You know, I'm glad to have Larry live. Larry, he's always a wonderful guest to come on. Gives you a deep understanding of what's going on in geopolitics and even on the economic side and the political side, domestically and internationally. And that's what we need. Everybody, listen, hit the like button right now. Hit the like button. Don't forget to share. And if you haven't subscribed, become a subscriber here on the Red Pill Diaries, the Red Pill Journals, on our Rumble page. Go over to the empowerment of truth.locals.com. Become a member over there. It's free. Join us on Twitter and Twitch. Please do that. I see Larry coming in the booth now, and I'm going to bring my guy in. And I got to say, how's it going today, Larry?
Having a nightmare with the link. It wasn't working.
Well, Larry, listen, it's not you. Don't believe it's you. I'm glad you said that because I was going to preface our conversation with this. I want to thank you. Most people don't give you your flowers. So I'm going to give you your flowers. Thank you so much for always accepting my invitation, coming on the show, talking to the people, and helping me beat the algorithm by posting the interviews on your website. I really appreciate that from the bottom of my heart.
You're most welcome, my friend.
Now, let's get to it.
Yeah. Nothing going on.
There's so many things going on. What is going on? Are we at war? Is this a world war in Ukraine right now, seeing that Russia is now openly stating that it is targeting, quote unquote, NATO mercenaries like the French, the Polish, and everybody else like that?
Well, Russia has actually been hitting these mercenaries for quite some time. The numbers have gone up and down. So if you recall, in March of 2020, on March 13th, the Russians hit the Ukrainian military base in Yavoriv, which is in western Ukraine, with some hypersonic missiles. And I remember at the time I was in contact with one of my buddies who's military intelligence, that he said that the Joint Staff, chairman of the Joint Staff, Mark Milley at that time, they were freaked out because they had no idea those missiles were inbound. They caught them completely unawares. That base at Yavoriv was a de facto NATO base. That's where NATO training took place. You had a lot of foreign mercenaries flowing in there. So a bunch of them were killed back then. Then over the ensuing, during the last 2 years, up and down, the number of these mercenaries, foreign mercs, have fluctuated and changed in quality and quantity. In 2022, you got what I call sort of the fanboy crowd, the Rambos, they've been, video gamers. Oh man, I'm gonna go play war. They got over there and found out, oh my God, they're shooting back. This ain't fun. And so a lot of them that went in 2022 got out, came back. It was also the Ukrainians are pretty disorganized. But what we're seeing now over the last 2 or 3 months is a deliberate policy by NATO, taking uniformed soldiers, getting them out of their national uniforms, transitioning them. Let's call them transgender soldiers. That's what they are. They're like transgender nationals. They don't identify, or they identify as not French. Identify as not American. They identify as not German. But you got Americans, Germans, Poles, and French, and Brits who are going into Ukraine to provide critical skills that Ukraine no longer has because they've been killed or destroyed. And, Russia is going to keep the pace up. So I think the likelihood of the war spreading in Ukraine is actually pretty low because Ukraine's getting beat so bad. And Ukraine it's in the midst of domestic turmoil with President Zelensky increasingly isolated. You got General Zaluzhny carping at him. Zelensky's the leaking word that they're going to replace Zaluzhny with the intel chief, who, that'd be like putting your head chef in charge of the military. They might eat well, but that's about it. This guy Budanov, he's a a ruthless intelligence chief, but he's not a good military tactician or strategist. And then on top of it, you got the mayor Klitschko, the heavyweight boxer who, I guess proof of his brain injury that he went into politics. He is out calling Zelensky a dictator today. So it's a mess, dude. Just a mess.
Well, do you think those strikes on the market were in response, like NATO and the U.S. lashing out at Russia for taking out those French and Western soldiers?
No, I think this is part of a deliberate strategy to try to kill civilians in the belief that if you kill enough civilians on the Russian side, it will say, hey, Vladimir Putin, you can't protect your civilians. Therefore, they're going to rise up and throw out Vladimir Putin. It's crazy. It's really not based on history. But, I started thinking about this. And one of the differences between, let's call it the old Soviet military doctrine and U.S., British, the Western Allies military doctrine is the Western Allies put a lot of stock in killing civilians. And let's go back to World War II. The Germans started the Battle of Britain and the bombing of some civilian areas sort of by accident. They thought they were bombing a factory, and the bomb dropped into a populated area in London. And then in response to that, Churchill ordered his bombers to go bomb Berlin, which they did. And then the tit for tat was on. And I was saying, I wonder how many Brits died in the Battle of Britain. I looked that up, and the numbers are about 70,000, 75,000. A lot of people, not trying to minimize it. But then I looked up how many German civilians did the Allies kill with their bombing campaigns? Almost 1 million. Oh. So so what we're looking at is, and it's like what's going on in Israel and Gaza. Okay, Hamas, let's say Hamas killed all the 1,200. They didn't, but let's just, for sake of argument, that the Hamas killed 1,200 Israelis. Israelis are now killed 30,000 Palestinians and at least 12,000 women and children. It's disproportionate. And then you go through World War II. United States killed killed massive numbers of Japanese civilians in the bombings of the cities in Japan. And again, killing these civilians doesn't stop the war, doesn't weaken the enemy. And many times it makes the enemy more resolute in fighting back. Think about somebody came in and killed members of your family. Mm-hmm. You'd want revenge. Mm-hmm. You'd want to go get them. I would. So we get that phenomena. And then, when you start looking at it through history, in Vietnam, the United States killed millions of civilians, not hundreds. Ditto in Iraq, hundreds of thousands at least there. And so what we see is really a sickening record on the part of the United States, where we've gotten in the habit that, we feel that if we're provoked, we can go kill civilians. And it becomes sort of part of our military doctrine. So, here's the Nets just sort of following what we do. It's that sick and twisted. I'm just disgusted by it.
But doesn't that reverberate back on the soldiers? Because I know my uncle served in Vietnam, and things that happen, he won't even speak on, or even, it's like he blocked that out. You know what I mean? Like he won't even discuss his time at Vietnam. It's like a blot in his life. You know what I mean? He discussed it once or twice, and he never discussed it again, especially around me.
Yeah. No, it's the United States, we end up looking at the world like it's bifurcated, that there are only two paths, to the right, to the left, and that's it. And so if you look back, with respect to World War II, we decided that this strategic bombing of Japan, blowing up their cities and depopulating them, was the way to go. You know what? We really could have blockaded them, blocked them in, but we were in a hurry to get the war done. We didn't have the patience. They said that the only option was to surrender or invade Japan. Well, I would argue there would have been some other alternatives. And we were strong enough that we could have imposed a pretty significant naval blockade. And then, bombing runs on airfields and military targets. I have no problem with blowing up military targets, but the problem is, frankly, we acted a lot like the Israelis are acting now in Gaza, blowing up hospitals, schools, churches, universities, and laying waste to so that nobody can live there. And it really is, it's a complete contrast with how Russia has conducted the special military operation in Kiev, throughout Ukraine, not just Kiev. Yeah, they've launched thousands of missile rocket drone attacks. If the Russians were inflicting civilian casualties, just like Ukraine did on Sunday in Donetsk, that would be all over the news. That would be front page news. The United States would be trumpeting it just to reinforce the trying to build world opinion against Russia as a bunch of criminals. They're not doing that because Russia's not doing it. Russia's being precise in what it's hitting military, industrial targets, and it'll hit critical infrastructure. But it has gone at great pains to avoid inflicting civilian casualties. Russians have a different way of doing business.
Speaking on Israel, I was reading yesterday that they compiled a list of over 1,000 mosques and churches that were destroyed, have been destroyed since the bombing campaign. That is outrageous, because had there been a synagogue, the West would have been outraged. And I'm surprised that Christians are not outraged about this, that all those churches were destroyed on a bombing raid of anger. And it seems like to me that Netanyahu has lost his mind, because now he's pivoting to escalate with Syria, with Lebanon, with everybody. Where are we at? And all of the people in the know say that they can't win a war against Hezbollah.
Yeah. Well, I wish this whole war would come to an end, but it's not going to. So the way to make it end, I hope Israel goes after Hezbollah. I hope they attack Hezbollah. I hope they invade southern Lebanon, because they're going to get their ass kicked. And it's only when you get your ass whipped that you find out, okay, that was a bad idea. And they're going to have to come to a political agreement. You've dealt with bullies in your life, and they come up and, at some point you got to break their nose, and put them on the ground. And only then will they sort of wake up from this, okay, maybe this bullying thing is not a good idea. It's not working out good for me. And that's what it's going to take. I think Israel, I wrote a lot about Israel's invasion into southern Lebanon in 2006, and said before they went in at the time they were going to get beat. And little did I realize they were going to get beat as bad as they did. And, I got a lot of pushback from the pro-Israel crowd back then. I'll tell you what, we're now 18 years later, almost 20 years later. Hezbollah is bigger, it's badder, it's better. And Israel is not. Israel's not bigger, badder, and better. Israel's more arrogant and filled with this bloodlust. But, if they decide to divide their forces, so they'll be fighting the equivalent of a three-front war. They'll be fighting in Gaza, they'll be fighting in the West Bank, and then they're fighting up north. Hitler couldn't do that. I don't know what the Israelis, these Zionist crazies, think they're doing, but there's a part of me that said, okay, guys, go for it. I hope you do it. It's because it's the only way they're going to learn some hard lessons.
But do you think it's some neocons that are like biting and chomping at the bit for this to take place because they've placed U.S. troops there as a tripwire, and then if U.S. troops get hurt, then they can blame it on Iran because there have been a spate of assassinations in Lebanon, Syria, Iran. It was just an explosion earlier this morning in Iran, in the industrial city. Do you think that they are now trying to push the envelope to get this war that Dick Cheney wanted so bad when he said anybody could go to Baghdad, but real men go to Tehran?
Yeah, Cheney's a moron. To say something that stupid. Again, I wish, my dream is to have his body strapped spread eagle to the front of a tank as it's driving into Tehran so that he takes the first blow. That's the only thing that'll, show him to be how foolish he is. The notion that the United States can continue to stand off and bomb military bases, bomb cities, bomb suspected missile sites, bomb oil fields, and get away with it, not going to cost us anything. Those days are over. We're seeing that right now with respect to the Houthis in Yemen. That, we hit them, they hit us. It's now like a lethal tennis match. Ball comes over the net, we hit it back, they hit it back, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. The problem is that the United States, despite all of its robust intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance equipment, does not have the ability to rapidly, quickly, and accurately locate all of these missiles that are mobile missile systems. They move them around. They camouflage some of them. They hide some underground. So they're able to come out, fire, go hide, go move. And then we go bomb, we may bomb some dirt or blow up a goat or a camel and call it victory. So, and yet every one of those missiles and rockets we're shooting, we're not talking about, a 10-cent 22 caliber long rifle, cartridge. We're talking some missiles that cost $1 to $2 million a piece. So you're spending some serious cash. Then on top of it, our factories, the industrial base in the United States is kaput. We don't have the ability right now to even produce 155 millimeter artillery shells, as an example, at a rate to replace what Ukraine is losing or using, and can't even begin to match what the Russians are doing. So this long-standing desire of the United States to hit Iran, so you and I are old enough. You can remember back when the Iranian students took over the American embassy in Tehran, and I was in Washington D.C. We just moved there, and I remember driving down Mass Avenue past the Iranian embassy. The old Iranian embassy was located right across the street from the British embassy on Massachusetts Avenue, and we're all USA, down with Tehran, etc. That's that rupture of relationship between the United States and Iran was like a bad divorce. One spouse caught the other spouse cheating with the football team, and just completely outraged, and have been, hell bent, supposedly, on destroying Iran ever since. Except we got to take into account what happened from 1981 through about 1988. Once those hostages were released, CIA went to Reagan and they said, hey, we're working with Israel. We want a deal. They want to provide Iran with weapons because they're worried about the Iraqis getting a nuclear capability. And Reagan said, okay, we'll do that. So we're providing arms to Iran. And that, ultimately led to Ollie Norris, famous Iran-Contra deal, trying to get out, trying to use some additional weapons to bargain to get the Iranians to release all the American hostages they were holding in Lebanon at the time. And though, at the same time, we were also arming Iraq with chemical weapons that they were using against Iran. So, hey, we're playing both sides of the fence. But we've had this hatred, this visceral hatred for Iran. And it is true that in the 1980s, Iran was active in terrorist attacks against U.S. installations, like the Marine barracks in Beirut, blew up the U.S. embassy twice in Beirut. So they're very active on that front. And again, looking back, I didn't realize this at the time, but looking back on it, the very time when Iran was most active in terrorist attacks against us, we were providing them with weapons. Wrap your mind around that. That is crazy. Okay, so since then the mullahs in Iran, death to America, death to the great Satan. And the United States man takes the bait. We come back basically, death to Iran. So as long as we continue to mount a military aggressive threat posture to Iran, it helps the mullahs, because whenever you have an external threat, and that's how it plays in this country, if we have some other country threatening us, number one, shuts down internal dissent. You can't have anybody that's siding with that outsider like the Russians, or you're a disloyal American, you're a traitor, so we got to lock you up. So essentially, the more the United States plays this aggressive enemy role outside to Iran, allows the mullahs to play the victim and blame it on us. The best, ironically, the best strategy would be for the United States to start sending flowers and candy, and say, okay, wait, we're going to take you off the sanction list. Okay, we're going to figure out if we can find a way to live with you. And the mullahs will be, what? Then all of a sudden they got to take ownership for their own bad policies, and that's the way you get a country to crumble from within. But as long as you create this external enemy that people can use to justify cracking down on civil liberties at home, we become sort of enablers of the mullahs. Now, with all that said, Biden does not have the legal authority to attack Iran. The only way that can come is if he goes to the U.S. Congress, asks for authorization to use military force against Iran, or the Congress declares war on Iran, one or the other. But I fear that they're not going to do that. I fear that they're going to try to launch some strike. And look, it's already escalated. Iran's already in the tit-for-tat mode. They've had over 140 attacks on the various, the 2 or 3 U.S. military bases that are scattered around, Al-Assad in Iraq, and Deir ez-Zor up in Syria, and then in Al-Tanf, I believe it is, out in western Syria, eastern Iraq. And, they're damaging the infrastructure, number one. They are causing casualties. I know that they've, in this latest strike, I've heard that there were at least 2 wounded. I don't know how seriously, but I suspect it was fairly severe, because you don't get hit with a tactical ballistic missile and just suffer ringing ear syndrome, tinnitus. The United States is not militarily equipped to take on and fight Iran and sustain the fight. Without mobilizing society and really shifting to a war footing, and even then, we're going to be struggling to get back on our feet. We used to have the industrial capability that you could sort of shift it from building cars to building tanks, or from building tractors to building planes. You guys it was like, okay, we got the factory infrastructure, we got the trained workers. It's just we're going to give them a different set of blueprints to follow. We don't have that now. No, we've sent a lot of that capability overseas. So this thing, it's moving in that direction.
So 2 more questions, because I know you have a lot to do. Where do you think this thing will be in the next 2 or 3 months if we continue to go through escalation? Israel assassinating these people, or Iran responded, America having a hand in it, Iran responding, the Houthis responding, Israel heavy hand in Gaza. Wouldn't that put a lot of pressure on those Arab nations that are on the fence? They don't want war, but the brutality and the viciousness of what Israel is doing will force the people in the streets to force the leadership to do something. Do you see a regional war?
Yes. Yeah. No, I think it's highly likely. I don't see Israel being able to carry out military operations that'll bring an end to the fighting in the Gaza. And I see that they will continue to take casualties, and the political pressure in Israel is going to grow to come up with something more decisive. And that kind of political pressure sometimes makes politicians do stupid stuff. Turkey so far has not got engaged. Erdogan's talked a good game, but he hasn't, delivered on his rhetoric. If he does deliver, then all of a sudden, this thing's going to really ratchet up to a new level. So you've got all these different dynamics in play. Israel's not going to stop trying to assassinate and kill Iranians, and that's just going to further enrage the Iranians, and they're going to continue to escalate and work on killing Israelis. That we saw that last week when Iran launched missiles in Balochistan, which is on the border of Iran and Pakistan, up into Iraq, or I guess, northern Iraq and Syria. So they did all three countries. Well, that area they hit in Balochistan, I know from a friend who previously worked in the area he was with a highly classified U.S. military intelligence unit. That our intelligence operatives have been in touch with and used Baluchis for, good Lord, now 45 years, not that long. And it goes back to, with the Operation Eagle Claw, the attempt to rescue hostages in Iran. I know that there's literally a Baluchi rug merchant in Bethesda, Maryland. I lived a block around the corner from that business. I know the name and know the location. Well, that guy, the owner of that, was his, relatives, brothers, cousins, whatever, were back in Balochistan. So they were passing intelligence information from there back to Bethesda, Maryland, that was then passed to U.S. authorities. That was one of the methods of communication back then. So my point is, Iran hit that Baluchi area. They were hitting probably a CIA target. People aligned that the CIA has used in the past to try to destabilize Iran. Similarly, the Kurdish area in Turkey that was hit, in Iraq that was hit, that was an Israeli target, somebody that was linked to Mossad. And then the one that was hit in Syria was both American and British. So Iran was sending a clear message. Okay, you want to kill our guys? Great, we'll kill yours. And that kind of thinking, it's going to lead to gradual escalation.
Final question for my guy that always gives us his time. If you see regional war breaking out, and you know that from your perspective, Israel cannot defeat Hamas, where after this war, where does this leave U.S. standing in the Middle East, and where does this leave Israeli standing in the Middle East?
Yeah. Israel has, I fear Israel has now sown the seeds for its own destruction. Its ability to sustain itself as a nation that other countries will want to be associated with, I think, is in question. And so unnecessary. Okay, after the October 7th attack, did the Israelis have an alternative, or was this their only option? Of course they had an alternative. Number one, Hamas was at odds with, not supported by, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey. Those three powers in the Middle East did not have great relations with Hamas. And after the October 7th attack, Israel could have gone to those three countries and enlisted them in an effort that would have been brought to the UN Security Council to both condemn Hamas and demand the release of the hostages, and to take steps to start cutting off money, support for Hamas, make it impossible for Hamas leaders to travel, impose sanctions on countries that harbored Hamas people. It would be easy to impose sanctions on Qatar and Lebanon, as an example. Well, Israel didn't do that. Now, if they had done that, it may not have immediately achieved the objective, but one, it would have kept Israel on the high road. But see, that's not what Israel wanted. Israel wants to vacate Gaza, vacate the West Bank, expel all Palestinians. Doesn't matter if they're Muslim or Christian. Get rid of them. If you have to kill them, great, but drive them out. That's what Israel's all about here. And people shouldn't harbor any illusions otherwise. So Israel had alternatives, and it chose to do what it did because its goal here is to eliminate the Palestinians as a people in Israel and in the Palestinian territories.
Man, thank you again, Larry, for joining us. You hear the noise go off in the back. I always set my timers to make sure I'm respectful of your time.
Oh man, you're always fine. You can, I'm always happy to sit and chat with you as long as you want. That's, I appreciate your courturdcy. You are a gentleman.
Thank you. Hey, my wife, she'll be happy to hear that.
Yeah, I'll vouch for you, brother.
Hey, thank you so much. I'll send you the link in about 5 or 10 minutes, man. Be blessed, be safe, and thank you for joining us on the platform.
All right, Rashid. Good to be with you, brother. Later.
All right, later. Everybody, we like to thank Larry for joining us. Listen, if you like great content like this, please subscribe, become a channel member, become a patron, do all of that. Support the channel, please, because we're going to bring a whole bunch of guests on the show, whole bunch of informative and knowledgeable guests on the show. We got to do it a little bit at a time because it's just me and my son working. We don't have a team behind us like that. We just want to bring you the truth, okay? Now, on that note, we may come back later on today. I'm working on a patron stream right now, but we may come back. If I get done, we may come back later on today and do a longer stream, about an hour and a half, 2 hour stream. If not, look for us to stream tomorrow, man. Thank each and every one of you all for joining me, for giving me your time, because time is the greatest commodity and it's an unrenewable resource. Remember, once you use it up, you can never get it back again. So you have to make sure that you get an equal or greater exchange for the time that you have spent. That's why I say spending time, okay? And so we hope that we have given you an equal or greater exchange for the time that you have spent with us. On that note, know that I love you if you love truth, but know that my love will always pale in comparison to the love that God has for you. Until we next speak again, stay strong, stay true, but above all things, stay righteous. Hey, mama, guess what? Your baby boy loves you more than life. Deuces, everybody. Thank you all for joining us on the most powerful platform for truth. Deuces, and we're out of here. Peace.